Daniel Reed looked at Valerie Morgan as if he had misheard her. The door to his office was closed, and the resignation letter rested between them on the polished table. Valerie had imagined this meeting on difficult mornings, during late evenings, and through dozens of silent commutes. Now that it was happening, she felt no anger. Her hands were still. Her breathing was slow. Daniel, 52, had managed Valerie for 6 years. He knew how many problems she solved before anyone else noticed them. He knew she answered messages after dinner and arrived early whenever a deadline tightened. What he did not know was that the 46-year-old woman sitting across from him no longer needed the salary badly enough to surrender nearly every waking hour for it. He offered her a promotion. Then he offered more money. When neither changed her expression, he leaned back and asked the question everyone would ask: "What are you going to do now?" Valerie looked through the office window at rows of desks, bright screens, and adults moving from one meeting to another. 3 years earlier, the question would have terrified her. That morning it felt almost generous. For now, she said, "I am going to live." The answer sounded simple. Reaching it had not been simple at all. At 43, Valerie believed she was doing everything right. She worked as an operations coordinator for a distribution company in Columbus, Ohio. Her week rarely ended at 40 hours, but her bills were paid on time. She rented a comfortable apartment, drove a reliable car, wore good clothes, and replaced things before they became inconvenient. From the outside, she looked stable. Inside her own life, stability felt surprisingly close to panic. Her average monthly take-home pay was about $4,480. By the final week of nearly every month, the checking account was almost empty. Some months, it dipped below zero. Valerie would move a small charge to a credit card, tell herself the next paycheck would fix it, and continue. The next paycheck always arrived. It also always disappeared. She had explanations for every expense. The delivered meals were necessary because she was too tired to cook. The new shoes were professional. The upgraded phone saved time. The streaming subscriptions helped her relax. The furniture made the apartment feel complete. The car payment gave her reliability. None of the purchases looked reckless when considered alone. Together, they had built a life that could not survive one missed salary. Valerie did not feel wealthy. She felt maintained. On a Thursday evening in late October, she came home after a 10-hour day carrying a shopping bag she could barely remember deciding to buy. Inside was a lamp with a pale linen shade. It was tasteful, discounted, and unnecessary. When she placed it on the kitchen counter, she noticed another lamp in the living room, another beside the bed, and a third stored in a closet because she had never found the right place for it. She stood in the quiet apartment and felt foolish. But the feeling beneath the embarrassment was more serious. The bag had not made the day easier. The purchase had only given her 10 minutes during which she could imagine being someone who had time to enjoy her home. Instead of unpacking the lamp, Valerie returned it to the bag. She took a plain notebook from a drawer, sat at the kitchen table, and wrote down the amount of her paycheck. Beneath it, she listed rent, utilities, transportation, insurance, groceries, subscriptions, restaurant meals, online orders, credit cards, a personal loan, a retail installment plan, and the balance on her car. The first total was wrong because she had forgotten several automatic payments. The second was wrong because she had counted one card twice. She opened every statement, checked every recurring charge, and began again. At 1:17 in the morning, the page finally told the truth. Valerie owed $34,250 across 5 balances. Her regular spending exceeded her monthly income by roughly $300. The gap was being hidden by credit, occasional overtime, and the small annual bonus she had already mentally spent before receiving it. The most uncomfortable discovery was not the debt. It was the pattern. She spent the most money during the weeks when work demanded the most from her. Exhaustion produced convenience expenses. Frustration produced online orders. A difficult meeting could become dinner delivered to her door, a new jacket, and a promise that she deserved something nice. She did deserve something nice. But the things she bought were not giving her what she actually wanted. Valerie wanted a morning without an alarm. She wanted to drink coffee before it became cold. She wanted to visit her 68-year-old mother, Margaret, without checking work messages from the driveway. She wanted to sit across from her 45-year-old friend Claire Dawson and listen without calculating how late she would need to stay at the office the next day. She wanted time, and she had been trading time for money, then trading the money for relief from having no time. Before we follow what Valerie did next, consider one quiet question. Which expense in your own life still brings real value, and which one is merely helping you tolerate a routine that no longer fits? Every financial situation is different. Valerie's choices belong to this fictional story, not to a universal plan. But the moment she separated value from habit, her numbers began to mean something new. Valerie did not announce a transformation. She did not make a dramatic promise or throw everything away. The next morning, she returned the lamp. That evening, she cancelled 3 subscriptions she had barely used. She packed lunch for the following day with ingredients already in her kitchen. Then, she transferred $25 into a separate savings account. $25 looked almost insulting beside $34,250 of debt. Still, the transfer mattered. It was the first time in years that Valerie had paid her future before purchasing comfort for the present. She created 3 simple rules. She would wait 48 hours before any unplanned purchase. She would use a promotion only for an essential item already on her list. And she would check her account before spending, not after. The rules did not make her perfect. During the first month, she broke the waiting period twice. Once, she ordered a decorative tray after a difficult conference call. When the package arrived, she stared at it without opening it. The tray was not expensive, but it represented the exact reflex she was trying to understand. She returned it and wrote the amount in her notebook under a new heading, Money Not Spent. That heading became more satisfying than a delivery notification. Valerie reviewed her apartment one area at a time. She found coats she had not worn, duplicate kitchen appliances, framed prints still wrapped in protective paper, and a side table that blocked more space than it provided. She did not treat every possession as a mistake. Some objects were useful, some were beautiful, some carried memories from her adult life that she wanted to keep. The rest had become a physical record of decisions she no longer wished to repeat. She invited Claire, 45, to help her sort the first group of items. Claire expected a cleaning project. Instead, she found Valerie sitting on the floor with the notebook open beside her. "I thought I needed a better apartment," Valerie admitted. "I think I needed a life I did not have to recover from every night." Claire did not offer a slogan or pretend that fewer belongings could solve everything. She picked up a boxed coffee maker and asked whether Valerie used it. "Once," Valerie said, "then perhaps it can become somebody else's useful thing." Over several months, Valerie donated clothing, sold furniture, and listed household items at reasonable prices. The process brought in $2,860, far less than the original retail cost. That difference hurt. It forced her to see how easily a purchase lost value once it crossed her front door. But the sales were not a magic solution, and Valerie refused to treat them as one. She used part of the money to establish a $1,500 starter reserve. The rest went toward the retail installment balance. More important, she stopped replacing what left. Empty space began to change the apartment. The rooms became easier to clean. Valerie spent less time organizing things and less money improving storage for things she did not need. She started using the kitchen table for breakfast instead of letting packages and mail cover it. Some evenings, she sat there with no purchase to research and no cart waiting to be completed. At first, the silence felt like deprivation. Then it began to feel like room. Her spending fell by more than $1,000 a month, but the reduction did not come from a single heroic sacrifice. It came from small decisions that repeated. She cooked several simple meals on Sunday. She carried coffee to work. She turned off sales alerts. She kept a list of household essentials and purchased them when the price was favorable, but only in quantities she would actually use. She scheduled one restaurant meal with Claire each month and enjoyed it without guilt because it had a place in the plan. Valerie discovered that a spending plan did not make every choice joyless. It removed the argument she had been having with herself after every choice. The $1,500 reserve grew slowly. She added $25, then $50, then $100 whenever the month allowed. When it reached $2,400, the car began making a grinding sound on the way to work. The repair estimate was $1,180. Valerie sat in the service waiting area, staring at the number. For a few minutes, she felt as if the past several months had achieved nothing. The reserve would fall by nearly half. The debt would still be there. The car would consume money she had worked hard to protect. Then she realized something had changed. The repair was frustrating, but it was not a crisis. She did not need to place the charge on a card. She did not need to borrow. She did not need to wait for payday while hoping the problem would disappear. She paid the bill from the reserve. On the drive home, the car was quiet. Valerie was not. She cried at a red light, not because of the money that was gone, but because she finally understood what the money had done. It had not been sitting uselessly in an account. It had stood between an ordinary problem and a new debt. That evening, she changed the heading in her notebook from emergency savings to protection. Then she began rebuilding it. If you have ever watched savings decrease because life required them, you may know Valerie's disappointment. What mattered was not that her balance moved backward. What mattered was that the difficult moment did not push her entire life backward with it. If that distinction speaks to you, share the lesson you learned when a small reserve protected a larger goal. Once the reserve returned to $1,500, Valerie focused on the debts. She wrote each balance, required payment, and cost in one place. The retail installment plan held $2,160. 2 credit cards carried $6,480 and $4,970. The personal loan held $8,740. The remaining car balance was $11,900. Valerie chose to direct extra payments toward the balance costing her the most while maintaining the required payments on the others. She understood that another person might choose a different method for different reasons. Her method fit her because watching the most expensive balance shrink gave her a measurable sense of control. The first account disappeared quickly because of the money from the apartment sales. The confirmation screen did not produce fireworks. It displayed a 0 and a date. Valerie printed the page and placed it inside the notebook. The second balance was harder. Progress slowed. Work became busy again, and the old reflex returned. After a 12-hour day, Valerie opened a shopping site and filled a cart with clothes she did not need. She imagined the packages arriving, the brief lift, the familiar disappointment. Her finger rested over the purchase button. Then she closed the page and stood in the kitchen. She was still tired. Refusing the order did not repair the day. It only prevented the day from becoming more expensive. That insight mattered because Valerie had secretly expected financial discipline to make her feel better immediately. Often, it did not. Sometimes it simply stopped tomorrow from becoming harder. She began confronting the source of the spending as seriously as the spending itself. At work, she stopped volunteering for every late assignment. She turned off notifications during dinner. When Daniel asked her to correct a report after hours, she asked whether it could wait until morning. To her surprise, He said yes. The company had benefited from Valerie's belief that every request was urgent. Her spending had benefited from the same belief. Both began to weaken when she learned to pause. She also made the debt plan visible without letting it dominate her identity. On the final day of each month, she updated the balances. Then she closed the notebook. She did not check them 5 times a day. She did not punish herself for every past decision. Shame had never improved her arithmetic. 9 months after the night at the kitchen table, Valerie's total debt had fallen enough for the progress to feel real. 14 months later, both credit cards were paid. The personal loan took longer. There were months when overtime helped, and months when higher utility bills reduced the extra payment. Valerie adjusted rather than quitting. Her annual bonus arrived near the end of the 2nd year. In the past, she would have spent it before the deposit cleared. This time, she placed most of it against the personal loan and kept a modest amount for a planned weekend with Margaret, 68, and Claire, 45. The trip did not undo her progress. It reminded her why progress mattered. By the 22nd month, only the car balance remained. Valerie considered paying it with nearly all of her reserve, but the car repair had taught her not to confuse speed with safety. She kept the protection account intact and continued month by month. On a Tuesday morning, she made the final payment. The balance became 0 while she was sitting at the same kitchen table where the entire process had started. Valerie expected triumph. What she felt first was stillness. For nearly 2 years, every extra dollar had received an assignment from the past. Now the past had stopped sending invoices. The amount that had once gone to required payments was available for something else. She opened a clean page in the notebook and wrote 2 words. Buy time. Valerie sat with those words until the kitchen grew dark around her. The sentence looked almost selfish at first. For most of her adult life, money had been assigned to visible proof, a better object, a newer version, a payment made before anyone could question her stability. Time left no receipt. Peace could not be displayed on a shelf. A quiet afternoon did not impress anyone who looked at her from the outside, yet those invisible things were the reason she had started. She placed 5 statements beside the notebook. Each showed a 0 balance, evidence of hundreds of ordinary decisions nobody had seen, and proof that slow change remained real. She realized that paying the final balance had not only removed an obligation, it had returned a portion of every future paycheck to her control. The same amount that once belonged to lenders could now become a month of shelter, a week without an alarm, or the ability to refuse work that consumed more than it paid. Valerie closed the statements inside a folder. She was proud, but she was also cautious. A 0 balance did not make her invulnerable. It did not guarantee that income would continue or that expenses would remain predictable. What it gave her was margin, and margin was valuable precisely because life could change. Being debt-free did not mean Valerie could leave her job. Her rent, food, transportation, insurance, utilities, and health needs continued. She also knew that money set aside for retirement served a different stage of life. She did not want to raid long-term savings to finance an unplanned escape, so she kept working. This was the least dramatic and most important part of her transformation. Valerie had imagined that freedom would feel like a door suddenly opening. Instead, it looked like another transfer on payday. It looked like bringing lunch, checking a list, and choosing the older jacket because it was still good. It looked like patience after the exciting milestone had passed. She calculated her essential monthly expenses as carefully as she could. She included housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, a realistic allowance for health coverage after leaving work, and a cushion for irregular costs. Her estimate was about $2,950 a month. 12 months would require $35,400. The number was intimidating, but unlike the original debt total, it pointed forward. Valerie created a separate transition account. The old debt payments flowed into it automatically. She added income from occasional overtime, but did not build the plan around overtime continuing forever. She kept contributing to retirement through work and reviewed her benefit documents so she understood what would change when employment ended. She compared health coverage options before setting a resignation date. She did not assume that leaving a job made those obligations disappear. As the account grew, Valerie's behavior at work changed in ways nobody could see on a spreadsheet. She was no longer afraid that one disagreement would destroy her life. She remained responsible, but she stopped confusing responsibility with surrender. She took lunch away from her desk. She used time off without apologizing. She said no when a request had no clear purpose. Claire noticed first. "You walk more slowly now," she said during their monthly dinner. Valerie laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "It is an observation. You used to move as if somebody was always closing a door behind you." Valerie thought about that sentence for days. The transition account had not yet reached its goal, but it had already changed the way time felt. Each dollar reduced the distance between obligation and choice. Then rent increased at renewal. The notice was not catastrophic, but it disrupted Valerie's estimate. Her first reaction was irritation. Her second was the old urge to ignore the problem until it became urgent. Instead, she reopened the calculation. She reduced one convenience expense, adjusted the housing amount, and extended the target date by 3 months. The delay disappointed her. It also proved that the plan was real. A fantasy demanded that life cooperate. A plan could be revised when life did not. During those additional months, Valerie began asking what she wanted after the resignation. At first, her answer remained the same: nothing. She wanted unclaimed mornings, quiet meals, books read without watching the clock, and conversations that did not compete with notifications. But she also knew that endless emptiness would not automatically become meaning. She tested small possibilities while still employed. She helped Claire, 45, organize the workflow for a community arts office staffed entirely by adults. Valerie enjoyed turning confusion into a clear process. Later, an adult business owner Claire knew paid Valerie $240 to rewrite a set of operating instructions. The amount was small compared with her salary. Its meaning was not. The payment showed Valerie that income could come from a defined piece of useful work rather than from permanent availability. She did not assume freelance work would always appear. She did not count uncertain income inside her 12-month reserve. She simply allowed the experience to expand her idea of what work could be. 39 months after the night with the lamp, the transition account reached $35,400. Valerie checked the number twice. Then she waited another month. That final month was not financially necessary. It was emotionally necessary. She wanted to know that she was moving towards something, not merely running away on the first day she could afford to leave. She spent 4 Saturdays writing a transition plan. It included a monthly spending limit, health coverage, retirement account documents, irregular expenses, and the dates when she would review the plan. It also included a rule she had learned from paying debt. If reality changed, she would adjust without treating the adjustment as failure. On Sunday evening, she placed a resignation letter inside her work bag. She slept more deeply than she expected. The next morning, Valerie arrived at the office at her usual time. She answered messages, completed a report, and asked Daniel for a private meeting. When the door closed, she placed the letter on the table. Daniel read it once, then again. He asked whether another company had recruited her. Valerie said no. He asked whether she was moving. She said no. He asked whether something had happened at work. Many things had happened at work, but no single event explained the decision. The truth was quieter. Valerie had changed the cost of her life until the job no longer held the same power over it. Daniel offered a promotion. The position came with a meaningful raise and a larger team. 3 years earlier, Valerie would have heard only the number. Now she heard the expectation beneath it, more decisions, longer availability, and another reason to postpone the life she had prepared to begin. She thanked him. Then she declined. That was when Daniel asked what she would do. For now, Valerie said, I am going to live. Her final weeks were busy but not bitter. She documented her responsibilities, trained 2 adult colleagues, and left the files orderly. She did not use the resignation as revenge. Freedom did not require a villain. On her final afternoon, Daniel shook her hand and told her the door remained open. Valerie believed he meant it. She also knew she might never return. The elevator descended. The lobby doors opened. Outside, Columbus looked exactly as it had that morning. Cars moved through the intersection. Adults crossed the sidewalk carrying coffee and work bags. No music played. No sign announced that Valerie had changed her life. She stood there for a moment, waiting to feel transformed. Mostly, she felt tired. The first week without work was full of sleep. Valerie woke late, cooked slowly, and walked without measuring distance or pace. She visited Margaret, 68, on a weekday afternoon and left her phone inside her bag. She met Claire, 45, for coffee and stayed until the conversation ended naturally. By the 3rd week, relief gave way to unease. Valerie had spent years dreaming about empty time. Now empty time sometimes frightened her. She checked the transition account too often. She recalculated the same expenses. She wondered whether refusing the promotion had been irresponsible. One Tuesday morning, she opened her laptop before sunrise, searching job listings out of habit. The familiar urgency returned. She almost applied for a position that looked exactly like the one she had left. Then Valerie recognized the pattern. She was trying to purchase certainty with another full schedule, just as she had once purchased comfort with things. She closed the laptop. Freedom, she learned, was not a permanent feeling of confidence. It was the ability to experience uncertainty without immediately surrendering the choice she had worked to create. Valerie gave her days a gentle structure. Mornings were for walking, reading, and writing. 2 afternoons each week were available for paid projects. One day was reserved for practical tasks. The remaining time stayed deliberately open. She cooked food that required attention. She learned which meals she genuinely enjoyed making and which ones were not worth the effort. She borrowed books rather than accumulating them. She wrote about the systems people created around work, money, and time. Most of the pages remained private. That did not make them useless. Claire introduced her to another adult business owner who needed help simplifying office procedures. Valerie accepted a limited project, defined the hours in writing, and charged for the work rather than apologizing for it. The first month brought $600. The next brought less. Another brought more. The income was uneven, so Valerie continued managing the transition account conservatively. She did not call herself retired. She was not. She did not claim that needing less had eliminated the need for money. Housing still cost money, food still cost money, health coverage still cost money. The car would need repairs again. What had changed was the size of the obligation and the amount of choice surrounding it. Months passed. Valerie accepted projects that interested her and declined those that demanded permanent access to her time. Some weeks she worked 15 hours. Other weeks she worked 5. There were also weeks when she did no paid work and did not treat that fact as a moral failure. Her life became smaller in visible ways. Fewer deliveries arrived, fewer commitments filled the calendar, fewer objects competed for space, yet the days felt larger because she was present inside them. One afternoon, Valerie sat at the kitchen table with the same notebook open in front of her. The first pages held debt balances, missed estimates, and corrections. Later pages held payment confirmations. Then came the transition account, health costs, and the resignation plan. On a blank page, she wrote what the process had taught her. Less had not made her free by itself. Less had given her margin. The reserve had given her time. The debt plan had given her evidence that change could be slow and still be real. The boundaries had given her energy. Together, those things had given her a choice. Valerie had not become rich. She had not discovered a secret formula, and she would never pretend her numbers applied to everyone. She had simply stopped asking money to prove that she was successful and started asking it to protect what she valued: time, peace, attention, the right to choose what work could enter her life and what work could not. The woman who once believed every paycheck had to support an expanding life now understood something quieter. Every expense she removed did more than save money. It reduced the amount of her future that had already been promised. The less she needed, the more of that future belonged to her. Thank you for spending these minutes with Valerie's story. If her journey made you think differently about the relationship between money and time, carry that question into the rest of your day. And when you are ready for another story about a woman rebuilding her financial life, one deliberate choice at a time, the next video is waiting for you on the screen.